and welcome to London, since you are in Iceland right now. Is that true?
Yes. I'm in Seltjarnarnes, just off Reykjavik.
Right. Okay, that's great. Let me listen. And what's happening with the volcano? We're really interested to know about the volcano.
Well, I went to see it on Sunday, so it's basically it looks like a cartoon volcano. It's just like a crater with. It just looks like the most basic form of volcano, and it is quite small. The crater is like 100 meters, so it's pretty easy to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in a small valley, so there's like an amphitheater of mountains around it. You can just sit in a mountain and just watch into it. But they are restricting access to it because of poisonous gases. So there's nobody there now. But on Sunday there was like 2,000 people there. And,
there is a joke in a poisonous gases, isn't there?
Sorry?
There is a joke in a poisonous gases, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think this basically is going to save my year comedy-wise, because it really took the focus away from COVID here. For like a few weeks, we've had non-stop earthquakes and now a volcano.
Yeah,
so,
comparing to the one few years ago when like basically all travel and kind of half of Europe was like paralyzed. This one is kind of like a 2020 kind of 2021 version of the big one. So it's like, yeah, I'm here, but yeah, I'm kind of not here. I'm just making waves.
Yeah, this one is really harmless in the big context of things, but you can go up to it. So you know, the one in 2010 that grounded all air traffic, you could not go near that thing because it was just like an H-bomb or something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, amazing. Because I was just following that. You know, when I heard that there was this big eruption, and then everybody was just talking about that. Plus, your name is also related to some volcano. Is that you said something about your name?
Yeah, well, eld just means fire, and
Okay.
and a volcano in Icelandic is Eldfjall, fire mountain. It's a fire mountain.
Well, anyway, I want to introduce you to all our crowd, our Cineclubbers. So we presented tonight, as you probably know by now, Pardon My Icelandic, because I felt that it represents so well your country. I mean, I haven't been there. I don't know very much about it, but when you talk about it, you know, I feel like I know more. And it's very, you know, it's just a beautiful country, and the way you represent it, I think it makes me, and I think make most people want to come and see it and just you know, experience the country. So yeah, tell us where you get all your inspiration, where you get all your, you know, just ideas from.
Well, I mean, this show is based on material that I wrote from 2011 to 2016. And it's filmed in 2019, but it's more or less like a greatest hits compilation of the stuff that I've done over here for the first decade of my career in comedy. A lot of my comedy had to be chucked away because it wouldn't be translated. It was just too local. But what remains is stuff that can work internationally, but you just have to explain a little bit. This means this, and this is that. And some of it has been reworked a little bit. But I think like the overall focus, looking back at it now, was that I wanted to do something very different from what Icelandic cinema does. And this being a cinema club, I think that like it might be interesting to put that focus on it. There's a perception that we have created of Iceland through our films, and it's mostly most Icelandic films have a very high proportion of nature and rural living. And for lack of a better term, they would contain something that I call iceploitation. They look like a Sigur Rós music video. But the reality is that like Iceland is very much a normal country. And most people here, it's quite rare that someone like me is visiting a volcano. Like 99% of the time, I'm just watching Friends or Netflix or eating pizza. So I think my
You're really weird, Ari, then. You're really weird because you do the same thing that we do in London then.
Outrageous.
Yeah, and like Icelandic films have been made since 1980. That's when we started making feature films. And when you really look at them, they really don't represent normal life in Iceland. The first Icelandic film that I thought really nailed Iceland is a film from the year 2000, which is called The Icelandic Dream. And it's about a guy who wants to make a lot of money by importing ginseng cigarettes. It's a comedy. And this film is the first film to acknowledge the fact that Icelandic men, almost all of them, support an English football club. This is something that you never get in these nature-heavy Icelandic films, where you get the impression that everybody lives on a farm, when in fact 2/3 of the country live here in the metropolitan area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
No, it's true because we started. Well, first of all, we're working in collaboration with the Embassy of Iceland, and we started the cycle of Cineclub in January with Last and First Men, and that film could have been shot at any place because it actually wasn't even shot in Iceland. They went to ex-Yugoslavia, to Croatia, and then to many different places. So
is that Jóhann Jóhannsson's film?
Yes. Yes,
yeah, okay. Here's a fun fact for you. Jóhann Jóhannsson was a friend of mine. I worked with him in a bookstore 20 years ago. And he was in a band with my brother for 15 years called Apparat Organ Quartet. So it's so amazingly small, this country. Like, I have not seen the film yet, but he shot it on, I think, film. He made one film which it was shot on Super 8, which is a heavy interest of mine. This closet behind me is filled with Super 8 developing materials, tags. I see that Ricardo there seems to have some photographic elements behind it.
Yeah, he's a photographer.
That's a film I'm very interested to see, extremely, because it would be very different from the normal Icelandic cinema. Yeah,
totally, completely. I think it's a very space oriented, and it's all music and the voiceover of Tilda Swinton. So it's an incredible movie, really. I've never seen anything like it. Very, very unique. And then last month we presented Rams, which it's part of that culture you were saying, probably the countryside and the fight between the two brothers, etc. Which this is what I've seen in Icelandic cinema. It's true. I mean, this is what I've seen mostly part of that culture. So that's why I was really interested to show what you're doing, because it's completely different comedy. I never met an Icelandic comedian before, so it's a good choice. So, but it's interesting what you're saying, that so it's basically the life. I mean, life in Iceland, it's in Reykjavik. I mean, in the city, most of the people live there.
Yeah, like 2/3 of the country lives in like the urban area, and I think like my overriding sensibility is that I want to use Iceland as a calling card. And I wind up talking a lot about it, but really the gags are supposed to be completely universal. So there is stuff in there which, if you look at it, doesn't really have anything to do with being from Iceland. There's a bit about my daughter that works everywhere. And there is a lot of stuff about the Nordic countries, but the thing I get after having shown this to many people, a lot of people say that like, oh yeah, we have the same thing you have with Denmark. We have the same thing with this country next to us. And most of it is pretty universal. So yeah.
It's true. Yeah, plus we're doing most of our Cineclub right now are dedicated to Scandinavian countries, which I know Iceland is not part of, but it's Nordic countries anyway.
Nordic countries, yeah.
So yeah, we're doing Sweden, we're doing Denmark, we're doing Norway, and then we're doing also Iceland. So so it's interesting to see all the differences. So what you're saying, during your film, it's I can tell slightly, of course, what kind of difference there is between, for example, one language, one accent, or now for example, when I listen to Norwegian, I just expect to go up and then to go down, like.
Yeah.
So no, it's really interesting, and it's true. I mean, it's universal. I mean, I'm Italian, and I mean, definitely we got with Spanish people, with Portuguese, we got so much in common, but also so many diversity, because we're similar, but we're not the same. So.
Yeah. exactly.
Veronica and I are from Poland, and there is a popular misconception of Czech and Slovakian languages like being basically the same as Polish. And what you said in the stand-up about kind of certain words meaning something like, well, sounding almost exactly the same or exactly the same, but meaning something completely different, and being actually quite embarrassing when you're trying to hold a conversation based on a mutual acceptance of like, yeah, it's gonna be the same. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
but,
I think these words are called like in French, they're called like the false friends. Like this word is a false friend. It's not going to give you the effect you want it to give you. So we have a lot of them with Faroese. Like the morning newspaper in Icelandic basically means to fuck in Faroese, but we only see it when they're saying something weird to us, but we don't realize how many Icelandic words are ridiculous over there.
Yeah, can I just ask, how many languages do you speak? Because kind of like you were really fluid with changing the accents in your stand-up, one thing. And secondly, you said Danish, obviously, as Icelandic, you speak English perfectly. You mentioned French now. What else is hiding there?
Well, I only speak Icelandic and English, and then I can make myself...
English and rubbish, so yeah, it's
rest is
one
just,
most commonly.
Yeah, rest is just mimicry, and well, I can make myself understood in Danish. I can sort of work my way around Danish, and then you can do Swedish and Norwegian by proxy. So I am like semi-fluent in Danish, but I only know a phrase or two in French, Spanish, and German. But I did learn all of these languages for some time in school, but my God, it's old and rusty. And like some of the German that I learned was just so antiquated because it was taught to me by like 70-year-old teachers with like 30-year-old books. And I remember when Napster first became a thing 20 years ago, there was a chat there, and I wanted to find a German punk song for a report I had to do in German class. So I wanted to find a song with Nina Hagen. So instead of going to some, record collector and borrowing it and then ripping it, I just thought, oh, I'll download it. It'll only take 30 minutes. I have a good internet connection. So I went on the German chat and I asked someone like, do you have something with Nina Hagen? But I said it in German, and I said, haben Sie etwas mit Nina Hagen? And then they just proceeded to write, like, laugh, like, ha 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 ha, Sie, wie alt bist du, man? 100? So they were basically saying, like, how old are you, 100? Because I was saying, like, have thou a song with Nina Hagen? I was doing like a royal Sie.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I can say in German after kind of like, I think it was 3 years back at school, I ended up being kind of like an illustrator graphic designer. I can say, ich habe einen Kugelschreiber. That's it. And that's my kind of like pickup line for any kind of like cute German guys. So yeah, I agree with that.
A very good pickup line. I have a ball writer. Yes, that's very good.
So we like to ask you then, since you're very knowledgeable about cinema, what would you recommend to watch in like contemporary cinema? The films that are coming out now of Iceland.
Out of Iceland,
they're not countryside.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to knock the countryside films. I just mean that we have an overwhelming tendency to think of them as an export item. So we tend to show off nature. Rams is, by the way, I think the most successful film to come from Iceland. It's the most rewarded, most traveled film. And that one is actually more than just the countryside. It's like a very fun little drama about like a feud that's gone on for way too long. And it does describe with great knowledge this obsession with sheep that very few people actually are into, but it's a big thing. So the director of Rams is he's a country boy and knows his shit. A lot of the times you get these films made by city people who are imagining what things are like in the countryside. So that can be sometimes a bit weird for the people living in the countryside. Like, what? We don't do that. What the fuck? We have internet. Come on. But Rams is like a very, very good film.
Yeah.
When they were shooting Rams, I got a request from the producer to fly over there to the north and to do stand-up for the crew because it had been a long shoot. And I said, what should I do? Oh, just do an impression of the director for like 10, 20 minutes. So it never happened because I was booked, but the director is a very funny guy called Grímur Hákonarson.
Yeah, we interviewed him. You know,
Yeah.
he was sitting on a throne very far away from the camera. And you know, it's so funny. And he said, "My wife told me that I need to look very, you know, important, very, you know." And I said, "Are you sure?" "Yes, fine, okay, that's it."
He's nuts, and he always has like his lip tucked a bit like this, and he doesn't call himself Grímur. He's called Gimme, and the impression was just like him giving directions, which is just like, and then you just go and then you just walk over there. He always laughs like this because he's so nervous. You could maybe do that again, but that's all. It's very local stuff. But I haven't seen many of the new Icelandic films. I know a lot about the 80s and 90s films for sure. So I can only recommend some golden oldies. But like my favorite film of the first era of Icelandic films is a Viking film from 1984 called When the Raven Flies. It's amazing. And it won Best Director at the Swedish Film Awards, which was the first time a foreigner ever won that award. It sounds ridiculous to say the Swedish Film Awards, like that's a thing when you're like in international context, but it's a huge deal. It's a prize that Bergman just monopolized. And this film is basically a spaghetti western Viking film made for no money in the 1980s, shot by a Swedish cameraman. It's beautifully shot. It's the guy who shot Funny and Alexander, the Bergman film.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's got like really cheesy 80s music. And it's basically a remake of A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood, which is a remake of Yojimbo by Kurosawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know your story. You've
Chinese whispers.
Great.
It's a cinematic Chinese whispers.
I showed it. I went to film school in London. I went to London Film School 15 years ago to study screenwriting, and I showed this to some friends, and like half of them just didn't get it. The other half were just like blown away, like how the hell did this film get made? But it was a huge hit back in the day. It was the first Icelandic film to make it abroad.
What was it called, Ari?
When the Raven Flies.
Okay.
Amazing.
Shall we pop it in a chat for all of us
Yeah,
to pick it up?
Oh,
Yeah.
I've made a note of it already.
It may be on the VFI player. Do you think that, Paola? Because they always collect.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, I haven't checked the old movies, but you know they might have it. Yeah.
There's the main props in the film is like concealed knives that he takes from his sleeve and throws at people. And my friend managed to hunt down one of these knives from the props department because his dad made the props in that film. So he gave one to me for my birthday. And
Yeah,
I
you
have
have
it
to have
still.
souvenirs. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's nice to having, like, you know, living in a small country, right?
it's brilliant. You fucking know everybody and everything is a phone call away. When I was a kid, I was just heavily into filmmaking and was shooting on like film and like Super 8 and stuff like that. And I could just phone up Iceland's only Oscar-nominated director. I could just phone him up. Like it was no big deal. It's just in the phone book. Like, hey, what does it mean when the camera says this? Like, well, then you need to adjust the exposure. It's brilliant.
Fantastic. So basically, do you still want to make movies, or what is it? Because I mean, this is in any way, it's a film that you made.
It is. It's the first real film that I make, really. Yeah. I want to make a film because, like I said, I shoot on film. I shoot on 16mm. And I hand develop. There was a film, an English film that I saw that I was quite fond of called Bait. It's from 2019. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's shot on one of these bad boys.
Oh,
Yeah.
you must all see
Oh
it.
wow!
Honest one.
Oh wow, that's
And it's
amazing.
brilliant. It's like all of the
Absolutely
dialogue is recorded afterwards because this camera goes like when you
Is
shoot on
it the one that's directed by Mark Jenkins? I'm just googling.
Yes.
Okay, I'll have a look. Okay.
I listened to a podcast with him just discussing like his stubbornness making it like this, and I just love the guy. He's just like
I love his story of when he went to the premiere in Berlin. And
Yeah.
Remember, with his girlfriend, and they took the overnight. They were sitting up all night. They had no money left. And he was so worried that nobody would be going to the film. And then he saw this long queue when they got there and said, "Oh, what's that for? And it was his film.
Oh, he deserves that,
And
man.
then obviously it took off after that.
Oh, I love that. I didn't hear that.
Icelandic.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I loved your football gags while I've got you. Brilliant. I did think you were a bit unfair about your Icelandic team, though. I mean, I remember that hideous World Cup match when you beat us. We all thought it was going to be a joke. You know, we all got loads of drinking. Oh, this is going to be a laugh. Brilliant. And you were so good and so good looking. I mean, weren't they? The team, that particular one, there were about 6 devastating men in it.
Yeah, well, there's one guy who has quit the team now, and he's gone like to become a celebrity in Germany. He's like dancing with the stars in Germany now.
Right, he can do anything.
Because he
You support, do you still follow the Premier League in England?
Sorry?
What do you still follow the English Premier League?
Well, the thing is, like, I don't follow. I personally don't follow an English Premier League team.
Right, but lots do.
But almost everyone here does. And you will meet people, if you go to the town of Ólafsfjörður, which is in the north, a town with 1,500 people, you just see Manchester United flags everywhere. And people there will say stuff like, yeah, I would die for the club. I'm like, you're going to die for Manchester? Because they would not die for Ólafsfjörður. They don't give a shit about it. So I made a sketch about this
recently. And as for Spurs, they're even worse. Anyway,
yeah.
On to football chat. Okay.
Yeah, I made a sketch which you can see on YouTube, which is about like an English football fan that I play who supports an Icelandic team, and this sketch was just popular over here naturally. But I just came up with this reverse character, which is like, well, it's really weird, mate. Like, you know, like in Iceland, everyone supports like an English team, and that's all right. But if I support an Icelandic team, I'm a freak. Rubbish, mate. It's hypocrisy, man. And then I just have him visiting Reykjavik and dragging his kids and wife with him, and they're really miserable. They don't want to be there. He's like telling his son, like, I renamed my son Boulder. It used to be John, right? But I called him Boulder because it's the name of the captain of KR, the best football club in the world. And he's like, but Dad, I don't want to be called Boulder. All the kids tease me. No, son, one day you're going to play for KR. But I don't want to play for KR. You're going to play for KR. And it was doing that sketch got me season tickets for life for that.
Yeah, great.
And KR is
Yeah. I can send you a link to it if we have a chat.
Do. Yes, do.
It's a ridiculous sketch.
All right, I'll have another turn later. So I got another question to ask.
Yeah. Okay. So,
moment.
Well, you know, the other film that we're presenting is Under the Tree, which I think it's an urban film. I mean, it is an urban film. So this one, you agree that it represents Iceland quite well?
Yeah, that one is really brilliant. That is one of the best new Icelandic films I've seen. So have you all seen it?
No, it's next month. So we still have, you know, one more.
I saw it a couple of months ago.
It's probably week 34, Ari. It's probably week 34.
To be fair to the Danes, I have
but I'm Danish and it's true. But I grew up in Belgium, so I didn't grow up with the weeks. But even when I go home and see friends and family and they say weeks, I'm like, I don't know what week that is, and I have to Google it.
Same here.
But the accent is really good. The impression of the Danes is really good.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart.
I think a Danish person put up our university timetable because it was also kind of organized in weeks rather than dates. So.
Yeah. To be fair to the Danes, they I think they enjoy life more than we do. I think all Icelanders are basically just heading for burnout before like 30 because we just are so disorganized and like
it's very chilled in Denmark. That's true. It's quite chilled, especially in the countryside. Yeah.
If you want to get like a Danish builder to do something, they're always really strict about like, I only work this much and this long, but they get the job done. An Icelandic builder will just say, yeah, we'll take care of it, no time, and they'll spend way too long doing it.
Sounds like Iceland has got a lot to do with like England in a way.
Yeah, it probably is.
It's just an observation. It's not being controversial.
Why are you such a small population there? Because in fact, that was something I wanted to ask about that when we had the Rams director here. I didn't get a chance to ask. Well, I mean, why do we not see any children and young people? Do they all emigrate, or what? Or why are you so tiny? There seems loads of space.
In
Maybe
the
they're like
It's
pigeons.
not like China, which, you know, there isn't room for people to have big families. There were none in Rams at all. It worried me, and that's
no children in
Wow.
films in general. I think that boils down to lack of imagination, and also like I think like that was Ingmar Bergman's one advice, that when he was asked like what do you have an advice for filmmaking, he just said like never use animals or children. Like that was like practical tip. Don't do that. It's a lot of bother. Yeah, we have some children's films though.
right.
But yeah, they are few and far between, actually.
But do a lot of people emigrate from Iceland?
The population is growing,
It is.
and it's one of the youngest countries per capita on average. It's one of the youngest countries, I think.
They're running away from the UK and Brexit.
Yeah. After the financial collapse, I think a lot of people emigrated, but they all come back. They all come crawling back to the island. Can't make it in the big world.
Well, it always looks beautiful in travel brochures. I mean, I keep being attracted to the land of fire and ice. And I mean, it sounds so glamorous and gorgeous.
Yeah, what's our pitch, you know?
Walking holidays and cycling holidays and things.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I think Alex can tell us something about Iceland, right? You've been there quite a few times, Alex.
I was going to say, June, you need to give me a call because
Oh.
I work in the travel industry, so unfortunately.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Sell Scandinavian Iceland. But weirdly, it does tie in quite nicely with Ari, because I'm pretty sure that in 2014, you turned up at Hotel Ranga and did a kind of impromptu stand-up set for our company's birthday. I'm almost certain it was you, but I think the entirety of us were incredibly drunk at the time. When
What's
people
the
were
name
walking
of your
backwards, kind of drunk. but-
company? What's the name of your
Oh,
company?
for me, it's Discover the World, who I work for.
Discover the World. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So I've been very lucky to go to
Julie's on
Iceland
it.
a
Right,
lot.
Nearly went there. I nearly went there with an ex-boyfriend, but then we went to the Lofoten Islands in Norway instead.
Sorry, I don't mean to like get a sell going on.
Alex, I remember
Right,
the
Jackie.
I remember it very well. That was one of the busiest nights of my life. This being a small country, the gig load can be quite heavy. And the guy who owns Hotel Rango, it's a really long drive from Reykjavik.
Yeah.
He's a madman. He insisted I would come. He said, I will get you a driver to drive really fast. And I said, that's great. I don't want to drive fast. So I had two club shows. One was at 8 and the other one was at midnight. So it was the first and then the first show, and then I was last in the second show. And then I had 4 other gigs, one of which was Hotel Rango, the gig where you were at. So I did like 3 gigs back to back, 15 minutes each, with 5 minutes driving between, 2 of whom were in the same venue. And then this taxi driver picked me up, drove me nonstop for 70 minutes, I think, to Hotel Rango with a police scanner. I'm not going to say how fast he drove. But then I did the gig for you and your group, and then I went to Reykjavik. And we have a picture somewhere off my gig list from that night. That's like an infamous night.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
And you're still alive, so it's good for you.
Yeah. But I've discovered through COVID that like you don't have to live like that. You can do gigs online, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Cheaper and safer.
So much safer, so much better for the environment too.
Oh, you
yes.
say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't tell me. We've done like more than 20 different online Cineclub, which is great. But at the same time, I feel like I would like to go into cinema and see people, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, it will happen eventually. You know, in May, we're going to
But you can't see people in the cinema, Power.
well,
No, I'm joking.
before and after.
Sorry, it's a really bad joke. Sorry.
Yeah, but I-
The group's pessimist, like internet is really bad for the environment. Actually, when you think about all the equipment, the like production of all the devices that we use, and cooling of all the servers and all that, yeah, But we're glad to have you all here.
Yeah. Yeah, the servers are murder for the environment. We just don't know yet.
Yeah,
I think that's one of
Ari,
the,
oh, go
it
on.
was one of the good things about actually just seeing the next Netflix show, because it did make you miss being back in a crowd and
Yeah.
seeing a bit of comedy as well live. Though I've always been afraid of comedy, because if you're in the front row, like, you could get picked on sometimes, and you're absolute bait for
I would
comedians.
never go to like the front row if it was being paid, because you would probably be signing something upon entering, and then you might be disgraced special for all eternity. But it was fun shooting it. We shot it on like red cameras, and at the time it wasn't sold to Netflix. We sold it later, but we shot it on like, we had like these insane lenses, and I think one of them was owned by Sven Nykvist, Ingmar Bergman's DP.
Wow.
So it's shot on like old lenses, but like brand new digital cameras. But personally, I'm a film fan. This is my favorite format.
Oh wow.
Like a
Fan
super
Whoa.
Oh my God, like proper classic.
Nice.
Okay, wow. You don't mess about, Ari.
I'm insane that way. I have a lot of Super 8 stuff here and 16mm stuff, and yeah, like for me, like I really miss going to the cinema. Last film I saw in a cinema, I think it was The Irishman by Scorsese.
Quite a long one.
Looked in the hours for that then.
Really long, but I knew how long it was, and I timed my bladder. I know my bladder really well from years of gigging, and someone didn't time his bladder as well, because that person got up to have a piss during the 2 minutes where the thing happens in this otherwise really slow film. So he just leaves, and then he comes back, and everyone is like, "Oh man, you missed it!" And he's like, "What happened to Al Pacino?" Like, what? No one knows. No one knows, and in real life, we don't either.
Can I ask you, like, because you say you're a fan of a kind of like cinema, what is it about the cinema environment that kind of like makes it more appealing to you? Because yeah, it's just always interesting, like, how do people find it, and what makes it for them? And do you prefer going with other people or on your own?
I love going with other people, and I really the crowd is just always more clever than the film. I mean, if the crowd enjoys the film, that it really tells you something. You just know when you see a film with a crowd. You know if it's a good one. I think it's quite rare that the crowd will completely get the film wrong. I mean, they will always react to the story flowing well. And it's the same with comedy. Like, you have the crowd, and the crowd is your editor. The crowd is your feedback. And also, it's not a monologue. A lot of people think that comedy is a monologue, but it's not. It's a dialogue. It's just the two parties speaking are using a different language, like the laughter
and feedback, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing that great filmmakers are good at. They can anticipate a lot of that. I mean, if you work with an editor, it's insane to see what they have to work with. They have like a film that's not graded, the camera angles don't look good, the color is all off, and the sound is incomplete, and shots are missing. So you will just get like maybe, I mean, watching the first edit of my stand-up show is just like was a horrendous experience. I was just like, but it doesn't look good. Like, yeah, we haven't done the colors yet. Yeah, but I'm distracted by the camera that's too bright. And they're like, yeah, but you have to see past that. And so, I mean, that's like people who are really good at making films and have clocked a lot of miles editing. I mean, they're just used to showing people and getting a feeling for, is it too long? Is it where do I need to beef it up? And like all of my favorite filmmaking stories tend to be like these practical stories, like Rocky, great film, Rocky.
Yeah,
it has like a really short training scene in the script, and they shot like him training. But then like the editor was like, I really like this training stuff. Like, could you make a song? So they extended the song and made that famous song. And then they went and shot something more. So like logic would tell you that like, well, he's just training. There's nothing happening. I mean, let's move on with the story. But it turned out that this is the most fun scene in the film. I mean, because you're so excited that he's going to be fighting. And they're just dragging it. And they're making you excited. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that films can do to you that really is just emotional. You know?
Sure. Yeah. No, I also wanted to know, because you went to the Fringe in Edinburgh, right?
Wow.
And because you were talking about the feedback from the audience. I mean, it's such an important thing. It's true. I mean, you are actually, there are two acting abilities there. You know, you, because you're, you know, giving the start, but then the audience has to come back to you. So how was it there? Because I know the Fringe is pretty, you know, intense.
I was just really lucky with the venue. I got a great venue that turned out to be a very hot spot for that year's festival, called the Monkey Barrel. And they had a small room downstairs that took 70 people. And luck would have it, I sold out after like having a half empty room the first day. I sold out the rest of the shows. And a lot of that had to do with the travel industry. A lot of that had to do with a bunch of lovely gray-haired people who had been to Iceland. So you had Iceland aficionados who were seeking me out. So I got a quite elderly crowd. And I think my comedy was just very well suited to them. I think I would have been in trouble if I had like gotten very young crowds, because I'm talking about a lot of stuff that you might enjoy if you're a little bit older. And so I had a very good run for the first time. And it wasn't until the second run that I got to experience a bit more realistic Fringe, where you don't always have the room full and you don't always get reviewed, and you know, you got a couple of shows that are bad, like just too few people, and you lose your nerve. So, but I mean, I've seen some real horror shows happen at the Fringe. I saw a comedian, after having done like 20 gigs, most of them to really empty rooms, doing a gig where there was 3 of us, and then she proceeded to have a full-on mental breakdown in front of us on the stage, where she started just crying and crying and crying, and the mascara was running. And I was sitting in front row because there was no one else to sit, because there was nobody there. So I was just sitting there, and we're both being held hostage by each other. And at some point I just decided, oh, this is a part of the act. This is brilliant. This is like avant-garde. But then it turned out she was just really exhausted after this horrendous Fringe.
But that's the thing, Ari. If there's only 3 of you in the whole room, you'll always be the front row. Right?
Yeah.
If there's only 3, like, you can be at the back trying to hide. You can't hide.
You can't hide. Oh, it was we were all Icelandic too, and she was trying to do crowd work. So like, where are you from? Iceland. Where are you from? Iceland. Where are you from? Iceland. I don't know anything about Iceland. Such a nightmare.
Can I ask a question around, like, sort of like your career a little bit?
Yeah.
So, because I was just wondering, because, like, how, like, because obviously you're from Iceland, and I can hear, like you said, you know, you lived in the UK, but it's like, yeah, I was just wondering, like, that's quite a journey. I don't know, like, how, if there's a way to sum it up, I don't know.
Yeah, there is. I'll try to keep it as fast as possible. I basically almost exclusively perform in Iceland. The only times in the last 10 years, I started in 2009, and I went to Edinburgh in 2017. You know, apart from like once in London in 2010 doing a couple of open mics, I really just stayed away from the UK scene. So I knew a lot of people who moved there to build themselves from the ground up, but I really did not want to do that. I just wanted to stay here because this country is so small and comedy was so new that I just got work immediately, and I could go pro really fast.
Was that all in Icelandic when you were performing in Iceland, the stand-up? Yeah.
But then also the travel industry grew so fast here that we started having shitloads of conferences, and you would just get these requests like, hello, we're having a conference for Norwegian, Swedish, Finnish, and Estonian urologists. Would you like to do a gig for them? I'm like, yeah, I mean, urology, of course. How could I say no? And then I sort of started to put together a very crude 10 minutes, which was just translations of my Icelandic material. And in the end, I wound up discovering a small circuit of Nordic festivals that I would sort of visit, mainly in Finland. I had like one friend from Finland who would just always book me. So that's where I practiced most of my English routines. So by the time I finally went to the Fringe in 2017, I just had a back catalog of stuff that I'd done in English over the years. But really, I'm a child of the catering industry and the conference industry. If it wasn't for these random conferences that they have here, and also like the film festivals, I always did gigs for them. got like to do a gig for the Reykjavik Film Festival twice, and that was fun. You could, you know, show off some film jokes, and had some old material about like Clint Eastwood and stuff like that. It just worked a charm. It was just, I just told like an old story about Clint Eastwood. I don't know if you've heard it. He was filming a movie once, and he says something in a scene, and then he slips and falls at the end, and the cameraman goes like, "Okay, cut, we're gonna reshoot that." And apparently Clint Eastwood is supposed to have said, no, keep that in. The French will be debating its meaning for years. And I just told stuff like that, and like, it was brilliant. I got to meet Milos Forman and, you know, these legendary people, and I just got to practice here. So I never made the move to London, and I don't think I would have lasted a week there. It was very necessary for me to build myself up here. And like, I'm not a person who likes adversity. If the going gets tough, I do not get going. I just bugger off. And I think if my first gig had not gone well, I think I would have just not tried it again. So in a way, I think Iceland has been like the key to my journey.
That's amazing. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But long story short, like the first gig at the Fringe in 2017, that first gig ever, there was an agent in the audience who went on to sign me, who then went on to leave me to go work for Netflix. And 3 years later, she wound up buying the special. So,
so wait, she signed you. So she saw you at Edinburgh Fringe in 2017. She signed you, and you said she left you to go to Netflix.
Yeah, she got headhunted, so she could not say no to Netflix.
Yeah, and then is that how she remembered you, or?
Yeah, I mean, she was my agent, but she could not sell the special right off the bat. I mean, they were in no rush to buy a special from somebody who has a local following of maybe 100,000 people. They were maybe more interested in buying stuff from big countries, which is...
But that's a lot, 100,000 people in Iceland. That's like, how many is that? I was going to say a number.
1 out of 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say a third. I was just going to say a third, but I was like, is that the right number? I didn't want to be...
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so that's still, you know, like, exactly. Per capita is fantastic. Yeah.
It was a long process.
But that's amazing. Okay, yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah, we got a question from Inga. So Inga, would you like to go ahead?
Can you say it in Iceland?
Hi. No, I just wanted to ask Ari if he's got any suggestion for someone like me who's learning Icelandic on her own. And is it something I can see from your face that I'm not mad?
Just so impressed.
Let's hit us.
You know, if there's any
say something, Inga. Say something. Yeah.
Oh God. Sæll, Ari. Ég heiti Inga. Ég frá Ítalíu, en ég bý í Glasgow.
Þetta ótrúlegt. Þetta rosalegt, sko.
Takk kærlega.
Now we want to know too.
That's amazing.
I just said my name is Inga, I'm from Italy, but I live in Glasgow.
Do you speak German as well?
No, I don't. No.
Like that, we have the same grammar as Germans, except theirs is a little bit more complicated even. But like, you seem to be able to completely emulate like the rolling R, and you can say the et.
Yeah.
That's a flex. That's crazy. The side sounding et. Which side do you do it on, right or left? Et.
Both.
That's amazing. Like most people I know do it either one side.
Yeah, I do it like in the at the base of the mouth, like that.
As well.
Oh yeah, I'm Italian, so and I live in Scotland, so the is not difficult.
Natural to you.
Because when you said Glasgow, you sounded like you were from Glasgow as well. Like you're really good at languages by the sounds of it.
Oh, thank you.
You can say Sæll.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sound that most people don't really know how to do. That's
and you were saying in the chat that you got married in Iceland.
Honeymoon.
No, I went on my honeymoon to Iceland at the end of January. and everybody thought that I was mad because people were expecting me to go, you know, to the Mauritius and Bali, and I'd always wanted to go to Iceland because for some strange reason I've got an Icelandic name, which has nothing to do with my origins, and so yeah, I went on my honeymoon in Iceland. I went back there the following year.
But like, if you want to study, I mean, I'm not sure what the best. I don't know many people who have gone up and just learned Icelandic on their own.
I even got myself this grammar. Speaking of really old-fashioned grammars.
Hi, can I suggest something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I also learned Icelandic many years ago.
Oh wow.
What I normally do is I really love listening to Icelandic music. So I don't know whether you hear any like Icelandic bands or musicians, and a lot of them are really good. I think, you know, learning Icelandic is really difficult, and you know, I think you have to learn like the how to say, like phrases instead of like learning vocabularies, because I find it so difficult that you know, Icelandic, they have so many declension when it comes to nouns. And you know, I thought I speak German, and I thought like German is really difficult, but then I learned like Icelandic like in the lessons. I'm like, oh my god, you know, what have I put myself in this situation, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I studied Latin and ancient Greek, so I'm sort of familiar too with declensions. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna be okay. And I bought this. This is a torture.
That looks like what we used to have like at school, you know, these old school books.
Yeah,
School,
it's apparently it's a complete Icelandic grammar, and it was like written for like during the war or something. So it's
stuff. It's lovely.
This is so difficult that I just put it aside for now.
Yeah. It's like the Nordic kind of like mythology, poetic Edda. Was that Norwegian or was that Icelandic actually?
Icelandic.
Yeah, there you go. I had it on a CD given by my history teacher who's like, yeah, well, never mind. But yeah, it was kind of like, it was amazing kind of listening to it because I had Latin and then at some point like history, and that came into place. So it was just kind of like languages, apparently like particularly the obsolete ones. It's so kind of like nice to keep it up and kind of like surprise people with like a vicissitude or a kind of like a funky kind of old-fashioned word once in a while, and they go back in fashion though. So yeah.
There's one thing you could do. Are you familiar with the app Storytel?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Like Inga, if you
sorry, I lost you for a second.
Yeah, like, are you familiar with the app Storytel, a Swedish app with audiobooks?
No.
So Storytel is huge in Iceland, and so many books are there. And I think you have the option of listening to someone read and reading as you go on. So I think it might be very clever to just. So
is it an app basically?
It's like Spotify with books.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You can also read them in many cases as well. So
I'll check it out. Thank you.
So you can like. You should check out my dad's books, Ari Eldjarn. He writes a lot of short stories, very funny, and we actually translated a lot of them into English. They have not been published yet. If you send me an email, I could send you maybe like English translations, and then you can listen to like the audiobook version of it.
Oh yes, please. Thank you very much.
Sounds fantastic.
Very exciting.
Tell us the shit if you want to listen
about your father. So you got a storyteller father, and so you picked up. It was an inspiration for you.
Yeah, definitely. And also just like me and my brothers, we just all like to talk and joke around. But I think most of my technique comes from just watching movies and TV shows and memorizing them and acting them out. Like I could recite almost verbatim the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons. Like I just watched it non-stop. And that's where a lot of the mimicry comes from too. Yeah. It's just this desire to, like long before people were sharing YouTube clips, I was just like studying stuff. Like, I think this is funny. And then I just acted out to people. And then like, you know.
You didn't send the big tape, the film?
Yeah. I could share a film.
They're probably too precious though. They're probably too precious to share as well.
Yeah, too difficult. Yeah. But yeah, I find that basically like stand-up is just like filmmaking, but no money has to exchange hands. You are your own director, star, camera person, editor. I had a bit once about like Avatar, and it was a huge bit about Avatar and how it should have been dubbed into Icelandic. I wanted the same guy who did the Smurfs to do Avatar because it's like the biggest Smurfs film of all time. And basically I invoked all these images from Avatar, and everyone had seen Avatar. And when they listened to that bit, they were like, oh, I love the Avatar bit. And when you think about it, the production value of Avatar just rubs on it because you just say Avatar and instantly everyone knows what I'm talking about. But if I wanted to make a sketch about Avatar, I would need to paint people blue and do CGI and build sets, and it would be so difficult and cost millions. So that's the nice thing about stand-up. It's like filmmaking, except you're just pitching. You're only pitching. That's all you're doing. And you never have to spend any money on it. So
yeah,
it's a better industry, better business model.
Yeah. But then what are you going to do next? Are you going to continue like, or you're going to make a film? So are you actually
I want to do like, I think more comedy. So I at some point I think I'm gonna do like a comedy film, very low budget. I don't know if I will shoot that on film though, because film is expensive and hard to work with, but you can just roll with digital and make people improvise a lot. So I think I want to do at some point a mockumentary movie. My favorite comedy films are the films by Christopher Guest, Spinal Tap. Well, he didn't direct that one, but he wrote it. And Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, and A Mighty Wind.
Oh, so good. I love that film so much.
I went to film school in London and I got like a mentor. His name is John Furse. He directed a film called Blind Flight, which was about the hostage situation in Iran with the English hostages. So very nice guy, John Furse. And I asked him like in the first session, I said like, hey, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the films of Christopher Guest, but he made Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman, Mighty Wind, and it was in Spinal Tap. And if you want to take a look at them, I have copies if you want to study them before you give me feedback on my script, which was a mockumentary script. And he went like, oh yes, well, I am familiar with him. He's kind of my half brother. You see, his half brother is Anthony Hayden Guest, who was an inspiration for one of the characters in Bonfire of the Vanities. Anyway, so Anthony is my half brother. So yeah, he's not related to me, but we share a brother. And I was like, fuck me, is this Iceland all over again? Like, how could I get this close so fast?
That's great. Did you? Are you? Yeah. Are you there? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. No, I thought that you just froze for a moment. Yeah. So no, it's interesting to see that you're going to many different directions. So it's a mockumentary. Sounds really great. And Mia, she just set up. Do you want to go ahead? You wanted to?
And yeah, because you mentioned like Eurovision being kind of like a national thing, and kind of like the clicky point given and all that stuff. Like, have you seen the Eurovision movie?
Yeah, I auditioned for it.
Darren, well, what did you think of it? And kind of like, so how did the audition go? And like, that's a really good kind of like morsel for us.
Well, I auditioned for like a really small part. I didn't get it, but I didn't even get a call back, so I'm not sure what happened there. But
what was the movie? Sorry, I didn't get the name.
The Eurovision movie on Netflix. It's called Fire Saga. In a nutshell, I think the Eurovision movie on Netflix is one of the best comedies I've seen in ages, and I think it's a very. Some people said it was like it's so bad that it's good, but I completely disagree with it. I think it's fucking brilliant, and also it's made by Americans who know nothing about Iceland really. Mm. They make like a really stupid caricature of Iceland, but they nailed it still, because Eurovision is one of the biggest things over here, and it does not feature in our movies. Like, we do not tell people about this in our movies. It took an American film with music by Swedes to really put us on the map as a Eurovision country. And I was just really proud of the film. And like one of the funniest moments in the film is an ad lib where a guy just screams, "Play ya ya ding dong." So,
Yeah.
so that guy is a friend of mine, and he's a big time actor over here, and he's very famous for playing comedy skits where he does impressions of one of our former prime ministers. So he's hugely known over here. But the director of this film had no idea who he was, but he just said like, "Hey, do that again," and they added that shot of him. So, and they used it again in the end of the film. It's just the same shot, and they wrote an extra scene with him just screaming, "Come in here! I want you to play this!" And yeah, they just really nailed it. And the music is fantastic in that film, and it even got nominated for an Oscar. Husari. My only problem with the film is that they had a Swedish woman sing the song, and she does not know how to say Husavik. She says Husavik.
Yeah, I was wondering kind of like, yeah, because obviously you're in comedy and you clearly like very knowledgeable about films, and also kind of like in your comedy there is a lot of very kind of like stereotypes about Iceland and very kind of like a lot of cultural influences that are transferable, but also kind of like they give us a bit of an insight of the humor. Like, is your humor quite Icelandic or is it adapted? Okay, so
Very
kind of like, how did you find the humor? Were they reflected actual kind of Icelandic humor? And or
I thought it was a very.
It wasn't about farms.
yeah, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I mean, it's an Academy-nominated film now. It's just amazing because of COVID. It wasn't in the theaters, but no films were. So it's Netflix Oscars time.
Yeah.
I love the fact about that film. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's being so rude about the Icelandic. I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it." And all the Icelandic are going, "What are you talking about? This is amazing. We love it. This is so good."
It's more rude about Americans. Like, you know, all the scenes with like all those kids being completely kind of like just dumb and them kind of taking advantage of the Americans. Where it was just like, yeah, I thought it was kind of like very tongue-in-cheek, very kind of like merging kind of like British humor in a way and what I imagine Icelandic humor being like, because it's quite dry and quite subdued, but still kind of like there is something like quite like on point in it.
Yeah, and all the Eurovision stuff in it is just insanely well done, because that whole arm of the film is done by Swedes, and Swedes are like the kings of Eurovision and like the pop industry of Sweden. Like, two Nordic countries that really nailed it when it comes to cultural exports are Sweden and Denmark, because Sweden very early on, mostly because of ABBA, took heavy government initiatives to make it an appealing place to work and produce music, which means that Sweden, I think, is the third largest exporter of pop music in the world. And this is just a government fostered thing. Denmark did the same with films years ago, like decades ago. The Danish government would fund these interns who would study screenwriting in Denmark, and then they would go to America, work for free. They were paid by the Danish state. They would work for free on like American productions, and they would learn the methods of writing in writers' rooms, and they would learn how to map out these big series. And just look at the Danes today. They churn out movies.
Awesome, thank you.
That's great. Now, thank you so much, Ari. Really, we want to see you in London, back in London, whenever it's possible. If the volcano let you come, of course.
Yeah,
that's the main question is. And I want to remind everybody that the 8th of April we're going back to Swedish Cineclub, and we got Anyara, a science fiction film, and then we have got also a couple more Norwegian films. One in April, and then again the last Icelandic, which is Under the Tree at the end of April. But we'll keep you updated in the next few weeks. So thank you really so much. We just loved your film, and I think you're even a better person as just talking to you.
Yeah, I hope to return to London to the Soho Theatre when things reopen. But until then, I think I'll just stay here in Volcano Land and maybe write a script or something.
Yeah, and send updates from the volcano, please.
Will do. Follow my social media.
And the Northern Lights, which I want to see too.
Yeah.
Or any other street lights or whatever. We
Bye,
will do-
everyone. Bye, Ari.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.